since we're winding down, we have one week next week. Okay, so yeah, this is most people probably don't even know that we're even here. You know, for this, because usually it used to be I would just do it for 10 or 12 weeks or something. I don't know. So there'd be about 2 or 3 weeks between the registrations.
Yeah.
You know. Then I found out you could continue, so everybody wanted to continue, so we did. So well, y'all are here. Let's shut this door. Okay, before and you might as well just run this on the tape. I mean, let's do the one of the 2 remaining yoga nidras, and let's do the I think, or yoga nidra, because it's about belief and thought, and that will kind of fit into the movie of the week. Which is Annie, Get Your Gun. Do y'all remember that movie?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I don't know where Tilly got it, but it was the digital DVD of the original Annie, Get Your Gun with Betty Hutton. And we watched it. It was just delightful. That's right. So that's been perking in my mind all week.
Who was she chasing? She wanted Wild Bill, or was that Calamity Jane?
No, there was Buffalo Bill had the Wild West show. And their star shooter was Frank Butler.
Okay.
And so Annie Oakley came out of the woodwork and couldn't miss. And so it was Annie trying to get Frank Butler.
Oh, that's who she was.
That was what Buffalo Bill had the Wild West show. And so anyway, yeah, so we can talk about that. See if we can. And then my son's getting married Saturday. So weddings have been on my mind. I'm best man, so I get to be in a wedding. And I'm an expert in weddings. I was a wedding photographer since 1987. And I've been married 3 times myself to the same woman. So we'll talk. So I have a lot, I have a lot of experience. In weddings. I remember when I was with in Swami Muktananda's Siddha Yoga back in the late 70s. There was a big Indian guru that came to the West and taught hotel-size people. Whatever he taught, it would be in a hotel. And so and he had a. Didn't speak any English, he spoke Hindi, so he had a translator. Her name was Malti, or Mukti, Malti. But, and she would translate what he said into English. And it was kind of like a show. I mean, they were really good together. He would say a little bit, and she would translate it, very personal, And one thing she said was, she said, they say India is very poor in material things, but in weddings, we are very rich. So that came to my mind. So I was going to say, in weddings, I'm very rich. So let's get. I think to do this now, I won't stop talking, and we'll never get it. So just leave that thing on, so we can. So that will be on the tape.
That are passing through your mind, the movements of your breath and energy, noting feelings or emotions that are present, and your body is a radiant orb of sensation. And let my words become your words as we continue on our meditative journey together. And now you're going to spend time perceiving thoughts, beliefs, and images as means to deepen the relaxation and letting go in both your body and your mind. While thoughts and images come and go, I invite you to experience how you truly are the unchanging ground of being in which everything is arising and dissolving. And take note of thoughts that are present in your mind in this moment. Thoughts and beliefs that you may hold true about yourself. These may be positive thoughts where you feel confident about yourself or secure and safe. That you can speak and bring yourself into the world. Or they may be negative beliefs where you doubt yourself, or you may feel, I'm unlovable in some way. Note each belief, how it impacts your body and your mind, how you feel when this belief is held to be true. And see if you can locate opposites. If you have the belief, I'm unlovable, what would be true if this were no longer present? It might be, I'm love itself. Love towards myself, love towards life. And move between these opposites of your own beliefs. And if you like, stay with your own movements, or come along with me as I suggest new ones. For instance, in this moment, is there anything that you feel you need to do in order to be better than who you are? Or can you find its opposite, which is, I'm perfect as I am. There are plenty of things that need to be done, but in the end, I'm okay and perfect, just as I am. There's nothing that I need to know in order to be better than who I am. Or do you have the belief that I need to know something, some piece of information, by having it, I'll somehow be safe or better than I am? And move between these two opposites. I need to know something, and I'm okay not knowing. Just feeling myself as an openness in this moment. And I'm going to suggest some images. Just let them float freely through your mind as I suggest them, and see how each acts on your body and your mind. The sun rising in the morning sky. Waves rolling across an infinite calm ocean. Storm clouds gathering. Torrential rain, a storm raging at sea. People angry, fighting with one another. Storm abating, calming down. Waves breaking on a beach. A warm, sunny day, a sandy beach, feeling relaxed and at ease, walking along the beach. A meadow, flowers, stream. A dark cave leading into the ground where you can feel the moisture and the wetness of the walls, floor, the ceiling, darkness all around you, and the light up ahead. A candle burning brightly, sitting in meditation, surrounded by darkness. A path leading up a mountain to a circle of trusted friends. A circle of trusted friends. And vast, open, spacious sky. Vast, spacious sky. And set your attention free to wander again through your senses, noting sounds around you, thoughts.
Okay. Any comments on that particular practice? One thing that strikes me in that is the thought that with the pair of opposites, one of which is I need to do something to be better or to know something, and the other is opposite. I don't need to do anything to be better than I am. Because we're usually in the idea or the belief that we need to do something or to improve the world or fix something or be better or learn something or do more meditation or do more yoga or do something more. I need to get better. And so this really investigates that as a belief, that I need to do something in order to be better than I am, to be happier. And the counterweight to that is that I'm perfectly okay as I am. And that's really a profound, when we see that is when we understand that and see that from the heart, that's a profound realization that I don't need to do anything to be okay. That ends it right there. That ends the whole conflict with the world, that I got to get something out of the world or out of this relationship or something, it just all, that's it right there, I'm okay. And when that is, the first stage of that is a conceptual, intellectual understanding, but the full Monty, so to speak, the full realization is when we feel it in the heart. So we can think it, but that's still a belief. But when we feel it, then we are okay. And that ends our conflict with the world. It would be called atonement or at one. So the realization that I am okay is an equivalent to the religious idea of atonement at one. So this particular, this I think practice is kind of both active and passive. It's passive in that you can realize that you don't need to do anything, that there's nothing you can do, nothing you need to do that will improve us. And then the other one, there is something you can do, in which he says that basically is throughout Yoga Nidra, which is is putting opposites together. So if you notice yourself having a negative belief about a situation, for instance, last weekend, I forgot, I had to go pick up a friend at the airport. So I go get her, the plane was late, and then I wasn't sure if she missed the plane, and her phone didn't work, so she couldn't tell me, or whatever. So I was a little bit unsure the question. Well, she missed it and leave, or should I hang around? So I hung around. I listened to something. My first impulse was she missed it. The hell with this. So then I hung around. Then I went inside. I parked. Went inside and looked on the thing. It was U.S. Air from Atlanta or someplace. And so the thing said now, arriving now. But people had come and there was nobody coming out. So then maybe the people had already left and she wasn't on it. So then I went out, stood out front for a while. Then I went back in and then I looked up and it said arrived. So apparently now means it's coming in, and arrived means that people are coming off. So then very pretty soon, here she comes. She comes out. So we get in the car, and I don't know. I'm just a little off-centered a little bit, and so we get on 288, and just as we're getting onto the highway, there's a cop over there to the right, and he's just on the right, sitting there, and I notice I'm doing 80 miles an hour. And immediately when I noticed the 80, it's a 70-mile speed limit, so they give you 75. It's not 288, so you just say, so it's, I'm doing 80. And as soon as I noticed the 80, the lights on the cop go on. So it's that oh shit. So you pull, and there's nothing like a ticket to, and so this whole thing has been sitting with me since then. Trying to integrate this little because I don't get, I always try not to get a ticket. I mean, I usually put it on speed control and I stay on that, where you're allowed, and I'm careful. But I wasn't paying attention, and the car zipped up to 80. And if I'd noticed I would have come back down to 75. But anyway, then of course you could say, well, who is to fault? Well, the mind goes into troubles. I was really being careful. I just didn't notice it. For just a moment, the thing slipped up to zip the car. So just that. So it's like the conditions were conspired for this to happen. If the plane hadn't been late, I would not have gone by the cop at that time. Not to mention if my friend had not asked me to go pick her up, but there were a whole lot of circumstantial things that come together. I happened to be talking to her at the moment, so I wasn't paying attention. I just got onto the freeway, so I wasn't really adjusted to the traffic yet. Sometimes you zip up a little bit. So all these variables conspire for the conditions to be right for a ticket. So anyway, it surprised my belief system that I'm not going to get any tickets because I'm careful. So this kind of like surprise, you're vulnerable, and also so a lot of ways you can look at these situations. Try to figure out, well, what is the meaning of, what is the meaning? I wasn't intentionally speeding, so I can't say I did it. But I had no intention of speeding. So I was kind of innocent of speeding. but I was also guilty because I did it. The radar says you did it, you know. And it was the plane to blame for being late, that pilot. Why was that pilot late? If he had been late, I would have been in a different time schedule and would have gotten taken. So anyway, you can go on these little lines, you know, trying to figure out what to blame, but none of that makes sense, you know. So Buddhism teaches that sees the world not in terms of cause and effect, like what is the cause to this, so that cause is to blame, but it sees everything rising at once. So everything was right, all the conditions were right, everything rose at once. It happened. So then the meaning of it is entirely up to me. The meaning is not in the ticket. There's no meaning in the ticket. It's just a fact. The ticket happened. You know. So, but if I want to get the meaning out of it, I'm going to have to apply it to that, and that will be a belief that was the meaning of it. But it's just something I hold that is useful. So I could say, well, God was punishing me, you know, for indiscretions or whatever, or I'm to blame. The cosmic guru was snapping me for not being aware. There was a lapse in attention, so I got snapped. You know, like there's a guy, the guru or the God is a whipmaster. You know, and if you doze off, you're going to get, you know, so most of our upsets happen when we're not aware. We're doping off or not paying attention, cut myself or do something, you know. So it's kind of like, so it could be that, you know. So this was just a little wake-up call. Or, you know, I could go through how all this, but not all of it is just projection. So anyway, I think I think what I want to draw from that, so I can fit it into the rest of this talk here, is that there was a voluntary and involuntary aspect to getting the ticket. The voluntary part was that I was not intentionally speeding, so that I was innocent of speeding, but the involuntary part was that I was speeding. So I was both innocent and guilty. And so you could either say, well, you're guilty, but yet I was not consciously doing it, and I was consciously not speeding, but I was speeding. So there's kind of like a separation between my thought about what I'm doing and the actual action of what I'm doing. I'm speeding, but I'm thinking I'm not a speeder. You know, I'm innocent. You see, so there's a split there between. That's what these little symbols mean. There's a split in between what I'm thinking and what I'm doing. Okay, so hold that. And did you all remember seeing Annie Get Your Gun? I think you all said, do you remember that? That was a 1950s movie. Betty Hutton. It was Erling Berlin music. I was surprised. It was on DVD, you know, they remastered it, but I was really surprised at the number of hit songs. Every song in that movie was a hit. But it was really funny. Betty Hutton was really funny. And You Get Your Gun. And the premise of the movie was that you had Buffalo Bill Wild West show, and their star shooter was Frank Butler, who was a big famous ex-sharpshooter, and he was draped in women and everything in big clothes. And so Annie Oakley was the rabbit hunter, and she was trying to sell some rabbits or birds, and she couldn't read or write. She was a primitive. She was pre-literate. She was pre-civilization, like a Daniel Boone character, you know, dressed in skins, you know, and a bunch of ragamuffin kids. And then she came to this wild best, sells some bag of birds. And she was pointing out, that there was no buckshot in these birds because I shoot them through the eye. So she shoots them in the head, in flight. So anyway, they get her to. There's a contest. This is classic mythology. The classic mythology is that there's whoever can string the bow or whoever can beat the person, and they don't know these country people, and somebody comes out of the crowd who can string the bow and hit the target, they're the one, who is this person, So anyway, she comes out and they're having a contest with the great Frank Butler, and they keep up in the air, up in the thing, shoot up. They were shooting skeets, shoot two, okay, shoot, boom, boom, and shoot three, right through. And so I think when Andy says, "I pull 5," so she pulls 5, boom, 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 and he misses 2, or misses 1. So she won the prize, and they figure out that they ought to put her in the show. So they put her in the show, and she falls in love with Frank Butler. So he's like, he's a god. So he makes her his assistant. And so they go to Europe, and they break up. But she's better than, so they keep promoting her, and finally they make her the star, and so Frank Butler leaves, goes to the other show, but she became the star, naively thinking that would impress Frank Butler. So she's a primitive. She's a pre-literate. She can't even read and write. So she's very innocent and honest. And she believes that, mistakenly, apparently, she finds out that by her excelling in her sport will impress him. Of course, it does just the opposite. So then he, although he does love her, is attracted to her, loves her, he leaves. So they go to Europe, and she's unhappy. So the Buffalo Bill show is falling. Is not making any money because they're touring, they're doing shows for royalty, but the royalty doesn't pay anything. So they're just putting on these big shows for the kings and queens of Europe. This is in the Victorian age. And they're going broke. So they think this Pecos Bill is this other Wild West show that they think is doing well. So they're going to fix up a merger, and Pecos Bill, his show is failing, and he thinks Buffalo Bill's doing good. So they just think they're going to get saved by the other. So they come together, and so now they've got to get Annie and Frank Butler back together. So then that great song is "I Can Do Anything Better Than You." No, you can't. Yes, you can. Remember that song? I can do anything better than you. No, you can't. Yes, you can. They're just right at each other. So there's competition for the one. There's only going to be one the best sharpshooter in the world. And each one believes they're the one. So they're in competition. Yet, there is a love between them that wants to be actualized. So the contest is how the two become one without giving up their oneness. How can two ones become one and still be two? So they have this contest, shooting contest, and they want the Buffalo Bill and Pecos Bill want the merger to happen. So Annie's going to sell all of her medals. She's got a chest full of medals that will save the. So she gives them to Frank Butler. So they have to get this thing together. So they file the points off her rifle, so she'll lose. So Frank will win, and they'll be together, because he won't be, unless he's the one, he ain't gonna be there. So anyway, so she can't, if she misses, she can't, why am I missing? I can't miss. And so somebody tells her that they found the thing. And then Sitting Bull, who was part of this thing, he's the wise, he says, if you lose, you win. Dawns on her. So she picks up the rifle that has fallen off and misses. So Frank wins the thing. And they become one, they become married. And then the thing, I was really surprised, the thing, typical Hollywood thing was the music and the great resolution, because a lot of these, particularly in the 50s, the Hollywood movies, particularly romantic, there was always a resolution, happily ever after. So the resolution was it was really, boom, there was, but it was a huge mandala where you had Frank and Annie in the center in their white uniforms. The camera pulls back. And you have the Indians and the cowboys riding in opposite circles, going in opposite directions. So you have this dynamic mandala as the camera pulls back of the stable center and the cowboys and Indians riding in opposite circles. Huge mandala. That was a clue to me that the movie was really a metaphor for something more than just, the first level would be a historical document about Annie Oakley, in a particular Wild West show. And it was more than just a metaphor about how a woman can get a man, which was she can't get a man with a gun. Can't get a man with a gun. That was Annie's one of her great songs. But if you look at this as a metaphor, you can't get the one or peace or unity with aggression. So you can't get at one-ment in a conflict or with aggression to be the one. So Annie surrenders her belief that she's the one and achieves a greater unity. Which is the end of aggression in a conflict. So anyway, I was really interested how that movie was was a layer, like a wedding cake, had layers of meaning, and I always. And most people say, well, most people would go, well, it was just a story. It was just a story about a historical figure, and it was a musical, and that was it, But I like to, so I don't know if the meaning's in the movie or whether I see the meaning in the movie, and I play with it. But it seemed to have greater significance or pointing to something quite deeper than the original surface understanding of the movie. So then I got to thinking about weddings and marriage, because like I said, my son's getting married Saturday, and I'm the best man. And I have a lot of experience in weddings. Got married in 1960. Failed marriage and got divorced in 1975 or 6. Failed a divorce and got remarried 2 years later. However, we didn't get a marriage license because we were married by Swami Muktananda in New York, and New York required a blood test, and we were living in Cleveland, so we couldn't get the blood test. We were going to get it later. And so we never got the official legal wedding done by the state. So we were just married by the guru. So then in so we just never got around to it. And so in 2005, I was up at, I don't know if I told you this or not, I was up at Yogaville. We were up there taking my uncle, and we were in the gift shop. And there was a table here, and a Swami sitting there who was running the gift shop. And my uncle and his girlfriend were in the tire, so they were sitting here. And I was standing here, and my wife had found this ring. And she brought it up to the table to buy. And I took the ring, and I grabbed her hand, and I stuck it on her finger, and said, "Will you marry me?" It was just kind of that spontaneous thing. There was the Swami. She could have married or something. The Swami was they were like a priest or something. And the guests. And we were, and so right after that, I arranged a court marriage at the courthouse, and so as a ruse, we were going by there, and I had some friends in the car, so I got to stop in the courthouse to get something coming in, so we went in there, they were all waiting, the clerk was there, we had the ceremony and the ring, the whole thing, everybody was crying, it was so nice. So that was the third wedding.
Which now is existing.
Yes, so we haven't really,
Yes.
that's it. But let's put it this way: the marriage has been we like to think people, the illusion is that a marriage is a static thing, like in the movies. And Annie gets you going. Well, if you just get married, then you're happily ever. If you reach a state that is permanent, so it's not a dynamic evolutionary. It's like a static thing. So this is like the romantic illusion people in the West live under. So you think if I just get married, change will stop, right? That'll be it. I'll have achieved the one, and everything will be happy ever after. Well, there's always the awakening that this is not so, So the cracks in this thing begin to happen. Sometimes you can usually see them in the way. The little tiny cracks in this egg. You can usually see right. They can't see it, but you can see the sometimes what will become a fissure as they go on. So this is a marriage. You all still you're married.
Okay.
Huh?
What'd you say?
You're married. You still live with your. Are you married?
Yeah.
Yeah.
58 years.
Okay. And you? How long have you been married? 50. And you're the monk.
I'm the monk.
Yeah, so I got married. So how long have I been married? 1960. So what is that?
46 years, I guess, 45.
What is that? 50.
50.
55.
Right.
55 years. Okay. And we're still a work in progress.
Yes.
Uh,
Like a roller coaster.
Yeah. It's more or less a process of fine-tuning, because I know with myself that the more I practice meditation, the more sensitive I become to my thinking, which is there is a being or a stillness that awakens, that is aware of thoughts without identifying with the thoughts. So that the thought may come by and you notice the thought, but you don't become the thought. So the thought does not, in other words, you become Teflon instead of Velcro. So, when we start out, thoughts are like Velcro, and if you have a negative thought, it sticks, and then it brings a pain with it. And then now you got a part of, now that fits into our story of who I am. See, now that my belief of what's going on now is confirmed by this thought and the pain that accompanies it, you see. And so that begins to reconfirm my belief that something's wrong with the relationship. And primarily something's wrong with the other person. See, because now we're caught into this, I'm innocent, I'm not intentionally doing anything wrong, and the other person sees what you're doing rather than what you think you're doing. And of course, they are doing the same thing. They see what they think they're doing and not what they're doing. So each partner sees the other's action so this it's kind of like the ticket thing, where I have no intention of speeding, yet I'm speeding. So the relationship then gets all tangled up in these two ones. In other words, instead of having a one in which there's unity, love, or whatever you want to call it, there's two of these guys. So you get this here, so this one's pointing. Okay, so you get a relationship like this, where this one feels, I think and I believe I'm in the right, but my action is doing opposite of what I think I'm doing, and this one is doing the same thing, so you get this, and each one is struggling. Each one wants to be, each one has the intention, as long as there's any hope for the marriage, each one wants to be one. But they can't because you have two separate ones, and the only way for them to achieve one is for one to dominate. So one's got to be the sharpshooter, and the other one's got to give up. The other one's got to be in. But then the other one wants to be sharpshooter, and wants the other one to give up, right? So that's kind of like that's the dynamics that either destroys the marriage or moves it towards a creative resolution. Where they discover an expansion of their love, which resolves the conflict, usually temporarily. But in other words, it creates, either this is going to go in two different directions. Either it's going to go towards violence or say creative love, or creative, or so either it's going to go to abusive relationship, or it'll just get a divorce. It'll just split up. Or it goes in this direction to a creative resolution. A lot of times what happens is that, in other words, so a child will create a one that both can surrender to. So now the child becomes the savior of the marriage, because now both want the well-being of the child, and they'll subvert their own differences in order to provide that. Or they move into a greater understanding or relationship in which they're able to transcend the conflict of the two egos or urge to be one. It's like the primary imperative of life itself, the whole cosmos, is let there be one. In other words, this drives life, it drives everything. Is that parts want to become a greater whole, like with our body. I mean, so you could say our bodies are one, but it's made up of lungs, hearts, legs, cells, all these pieces, but it's one, so it's a body. But the body then is part of a bigger whole. It might be a family, or it might be a community, you see. So in other words, everything you see is going to be a part of something greater. So the drive is towards a greater and greater whole. And this is the way love, the dynamic of love, is always towards a greater unity, which is the surrender of the separateness and the urge to be the one as me. Annie Oakley and Frank Butler were both, I want to be the one sharpshooter, the best. And something has to give. So I was thinking about, too, that how this what is the spiritual dimension to this? Because there's a psychological dimension to it, where people go to therapy in order to sort this out. But it's also as a spiritual dimension to it, which is the I spell servant right? It's the model of the servant. So this would be the model that Jesus puts forth as the role of the servant who washes the feet of the sinner or the rich person or whatever. So the role of the servant is the role of surrender. Love your enemy. Love your friends. Love your enemy as your friend. This whole idea of surrender of the belief that I'm the one. In other words, getting back to the I think if I have a belief that I am the best, my opinion is the best, the true opinion. My religion is the true opinion. My beliefs are the one. Then I'm going to be in conflict with everyone else who also wants to be the one. So it's like two tomcats. Who's going to be the tomcat of the yard? One of them has to blink. So this, the way, and I think all religions are really focused on this problem of conflict and aggression and how to solve it, whether it's on a national level or whether it's personal, whether it's in a relationship, or whether it's in me, my own mind. Because whenever there is conflict, either with myself or with another person, you have this problem of let there be one. Because when there's one, there's no conflict.
But what happens to your individuality in this process?
That's the question. See, if I give up my being the other drive, there's ambiguity here that's built into this. And the ambiguity is, let there be one, means also that there is a drive to be unique. So there's the whole, and there is the unique one. So we're caught in two conflicting imperatives that we cannot fulfill both at the same time. In other words, I can't be the unique one and surrender to a bigger one. See, I can't have my cake and eat it too. I can't be the unique one and give up my unique one to be, see, I can't do both. So this is the catch-22. It's mysticism. In other words, it's the non-duality in the dual. It's the one is unambiguous, but the conflict between being unique and being surrendered is an ambiguous situation. Another movie comes to mind. Remember the movie The Butler? Did you all see that?
Yes.
Okay. That really was about these two contradictory imperatives, as I think about it now. The butler was, by his virtue, was that he surrendered to his vocation. He became a perfect butler. So that means he was, in other words, he gave up his, at least while he was at work, he gave up his, I'm a unique one person, to being the servant of my guest, or whoever he was serving. So he completely surrendered his own personal needs for the needs of those he was serving, to the point that the good butler is aware of what the person he's serving needs before they're aware of it. So he's able to come up and put the water there that they don't even know they need yet. It's that being so in sync. And this is the Christian ideal of marriage, where the wife surrenders to the husband as a servant. So she serves the husband as if he were the Lord. So he is the representation of God in the world, and her vocation then is to surrender and to wash his feet and serve the Lord. I mean, that's the ancient religious way to solve this problem. Because if you don't have that, you got Annie Oakley and Frank Butler, which is the modern marriage today. See, because when women went into the workplace in World War II, they broke the role of the woman as who was her domain was the house, the man's domain was the external world. So you have a cup. The woman's domain was the inside of the cup, the man's domain was the outside of the cup. And that everything worked that way. So you had a whole cup, and an inside and outside. So World War II broke that, so now women were working outside. And so now you had women moving into the outside, but also wanting to have the inside.
And all the guys were away.
And the men came back,
Yeah.
and so the women were not going to, now the economy began to change, so now you need two jobs to support the stuff that we started making in the 50s, the new washing machines and the things, you know. So now we got to, both people have to work to support the technology that makes life easier, right? And now that isn't even working.
Sad but true.
But you see, we're still working this out because it was a radical change in the roles that have historically been assigned to solve this problem. And a lot of men today, when I was doing photography, I used to get men who would come and get visa pictures to go to the Philippines to marry a Filipino woman because they were still in this role here. So Asian women, that may be changing, but they have been more or less in a previous non-combative relationship with men that has happened in that culture, where you have Annie Oakley and Frank Butler screaming at each other, and I can do it better than you. You know, so, and that's going on today in our culture. I mean, you know, this whole evolution of we really haven't worked out how to solve this. So I think most marriages become a compromise where it's a barter, perhaps. You know, you get to be right this time, but I get to be right here. You know? So you know, you were right yesterday. Now it's my turn to be right today.
Father knows best
Yeah,
versus Leave It to Beaver.
yeah, right. We can look back on our TV shows.
Yeah, in the 50s.
Yeah. And the father knows, you know, and Dick Van Dyke even, where
Yes.
the man works out and he comes home and he reads the paper, and the wife's got the dinner fixed, you know, and she's
Yeah.
talking about this and that, you know. So these two, inside and outside of the cup. You can't have a cup with two outsides, or one with two insides, because then you're going to get into this. Yeah, so these, but getting back to the butler, so he was a virtuous person because he identified totally with his vocation, which was that of a servant. The son was part of the awakening consciousness of African Americans that I'm an individual too, because the black people had been socially conscribed, if that's the right word, into the role of a servant. So they were socially bound to perform the role of the servant to the white class. Not by vocation like in England. In other words, you had in Downton Abbey, you would have the servant class and the privileged class. But it was possible for somebody in the servant class to leave and go make some money and become privileged. You know, in other words, but in our system here, the black people, because of their race, were by nature conscribed to the role of a servant, which is entirely different type of slavery than had existed before. Even in Rome, a slave could win their way to freedom and become a citizen. But our system locked them in by nature. So in the butler, you have the awakening then of the son, which was in the civil rights movement in the 60s, and the conflict that created with the virtue of the father. How can I be a virtuous man? And it wasn't so much that he was being a black butler, he was being the butler as a vocation. So so this was a very interesting dynamic there of the one unique one, I'm an individual, unique oneness, virtuous in a greater whole, so that in each, there were two imperatives there. the imperative of being the virtue of your vocation. And there again, you know, the husband and wife is a vocation in the sense that it's not, well, it's a biological role if you have children, but it's more of a social, it's a social vocation, that of husband and wife. And that's why it's in a state of flux, because it's not bound by nature. If you're bound by nature, that means you can't change. That gets into this whole thing with homosexuality. You see where the religious, the bind that the religious mind is caught in is that the Bible, and I believe the Bible is the one truth, right? Let there be one truth, that's the Bible, right? One truth, and the one truth says homosexuality is a sin, right? So now you've got unique ones, now you've got homosexuals awakening to their uniqueness, my right to be an individual one, right? And then, so how do they reconcile this with the biblical truth? The double bind therein is that it can only be a sin if you choose it. In other words, sin has to be a choice. It has to be a moral choice. So then they have to, in order to keep the one of the biblical truth, homosexuality has to be a moral choice. So they have to choose to be a homosexual, which is a sin. If you're a homosexual by nature, you didn't choose it, it happened to you by nature, then it's not a sin.
I was doing all right with all that until it did the subdivision.
Right.
You know, like, they just lived the man, woman, homosexual, either side of the equation.
Right.
Now they've subdivided.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think, bisexual.
Well, yeah, LBJ, oh yeah, so then you get transgender, and you get,
Yeah,
it's
right.
breaking down into different
I'm
categories.
good with it before.
Categories, yeah. But you see the dilemma, you see that the religious mind has here. The secular mind doesn't have that problem with it, but the religious mind does, because it's a competition between their belief that the Bible is the truth, that means everything in it is true. So if the Bible says it's a sin, then by the truth of their Bible, homosexuality has to be a choice. But then science comes up and says it's psychology, and all of the science says it's not a choice, that some little kid doesn't one day decide to be a homosexual. You know, it's not a conscious choice. So you get this violent conflict going on. Because there's no way to reconcile it as long as you say the Bible is literally true, with no exception.
It could be back then when the Bible was written, they didn't understand what it was.
Well, sure they did.
Well, they didn't know it was.
Yeah, well, they were too. The Bible was really a snapshot of a pre-civilized people. The ancient Hebrews, and these were mythological codes that were basically what held the society together. So the reasons they had for them were, you're right, it's an entirely different situation. Our mind today, the way we see things, isn't totally different from the way they saw things then. But to apply their worldview to ours is going to get us into trouble. See, this is a in other words, we all have world ideas. big ones down to little ones. So a big world idea would be, I'm a good Christian and I believe the Bible as being absolutely true. So then I see the world literally in reference to that belief. So I'm constantly checking whether something is allowable or not allowable by the Bible. See? So if something is okay to exist, it has to be okay in the Bible. So if it isn't okay, then it's morally wrong and I have to fight it. Get rid of it or convert it. I got to get it in. I got to get it into here. I can't. In other words, this world idea is like Yahweh, the jealous, angry God of the Old Testament. There's only one God, and it's me. So you have to wipe out all the other gods. You see, so the world idea is the one. And so anyone else, any other world ideas out here have to be eliminated because there can only be one. It can't be two worlds or three. So this world idea is like that wedding cake. You have the big world idea in which I live in. Our nation lives in a secular, scientific world idea of what reality is. That was created with Newton and the Enlightenment. And that's beginning to crumble now because that world idea is destroying the planet. It doesn't, it's reached this, made a lot of air conditionings and stuff like that, made the world comfortable, but it's also destroying the planet's resources. So that world idea has run its usefulness, and we haven't come up with a new one. So you got two competing world ideas today. One of them is the religious world idea that the Bible is the truth and all you have to do is follow the Bible. And the other one is that science is the truth and all you have to do is follow science. But each one we're seeing the limitations of the religious idea sees the limitations of science. Then you can't trust global warming. They're just, you can't trust the scientists because they see the limitations in it. And the science view can see the limitations in the religious world idea. So we're back up here today with these two world ideas. Each one thinking they're the right world, but the other side sees what they're doing. So the religious one over here sees the secular world, the scientific world, and sees all of the arms race and all the stuff that's happening and says, well, that's the limitation of science. And then we see here all the religious wars, and that's the limitations. So each sees the limitation of the other, and neither one of the other sees their dark side, their own limitations.
You get down to where you think, I'm not religious, but I am spiritual. And one of the problems with all religions is that they come up with this, what would you call it, their whole of the religion, and every one of them's got flaws in it.
Yeah. This gets us back to I think.
Right.
Because all of these world ideas are beliefs that we project on reality and then live in it.
Yes.
See, so an idea is like the inside of a cup and not the outside. So the belief looks at a cup and says the inside of the cup is the only good part. And the outside of the cup we've got to get rid of. See, so it projects an idea has an inside. This is what I believe in here, but you have to have an outside in order to have an inside. So the inside and the outside go together. But when you have a belief that my belief is the one, then that excludes the outside, which is everyone else. You see? So now these are the enemies, but it's my own outside. You see, it's very, so this, and we can see this today in our scientific culture that was really came into its own in the 50s, when you had the full bloom of the scientific utopia, and we believed that by now we would all be like the Jetsons. There would be peace, unity by technology, and we would just have to push buttons and everything. Robots would bring everything. We don't doubt that. We accept instead of slaves and servants, we would have robots. Well, that didn't happen. So you could see looking back to the euphoria of because we came out of World War II with the industrial, we were so focused. We were, World War II, we became the one of the world, right? And now we had all these factories, so we turned them over to washing machines instead of tanks. And we learned how to mobilize people in factories, and learned how to reproduce one product. You invent one thing, and then you could reproduce it and sell it, and then you would have TV that would advertise it. So then the TV advertising drove everyone to the market to buy the next best thing that would eliminate the pain of life. So
work out too well.
When you think about the 50s, you think about that. That was, that was like, well, we're going through it again with technology today. So now we're doing the same thing in the 50s, but with this.
Yes.
So now I can't wait to get the next best smartphone, right? And I'll stand in line all night.
More power in your hand than the astronauts going to the moon had.
Yeah. Exactly. I remember seeing in the 50s that they had to put a computer on a plane. They had to use a forklift.
Yeah.
Yeah. So So we're kind of like living in the dream of the technological utopia that's coming if we just get enough. The digital and computers, internet is doing more and more physical services, applications. It's multiplying. You watch the TV, there's a new must-have software or service that will make your life easier and more interconnected. So now the world idea has changed now. So it is a global village of interconnected non-bodies on social networks. We have completely eliminated the body and space, and its location in space and time. So you go on the internet, you don't take your body. The body stays at home, right? So you're on this, and you're talking to everybody, and they haven't got anybody either. There's nobody there, but we're all interacting, and it's a totally different paradigm today than the one we can remember not too long ago in our life. Everything is happening now like a virus. In other words, you can something can go on YouTube or something can get on this web, and it will catch fire like a forest fire, and the next thing you know, the whole globe is looking at it, and something shifts. it's like it's like this is a global. It's like we're entering into a global self in which all the parts are interconnected, but it's one. Because it's all on the internet, it's all one. But so it's made up of millions and millions and millions of selves all participating in the one. And there's a viewpoint to the self which is outside of it. So it's kind of, and TV did this. So when TV came in the 50s, it was like a god coming into the house, and this thing came down and put there in the living room, and everybody sat around and watched it, looking at the power on it. What was that thing?
Yeah.
Wait for the program to come on.
Yeah.
Remember what? There was nothing on it, but you'd sit there and wait for something to come on. And so it changed the whole paradigm of the family from listening to the radio.
When you stared at the radio, you remember that time?
Yeah, I remember. Well, I remember like when I remember growing up with the radio, I'd be coloring a book or something, and you listen to the Lone Ranger or the radio programs.
Unless it was a newscast, and then you watched the radio.
Yeah. Yeah, you would sit around, huddle around until you could hear it, yeah. FDR was a radio president.
Absolutely.
And he became people felt they knew FDR better than they knew themselves, because he was not a visual president. See, a visual separated, if I see you, you're there and I'm here. But if you listen to a recording of Eckhart Tolle or Krishnamurti, you're not visually separated. You become one with voice. This is what on Yoga Nidra he says at the beginning, let my voice be your voice. So you become one with the voice of the teacher instead of watching the teacher from a viewpoint, right? So the viewpoint separates you from what you're viewing. Otherwise, you can't view it. So that, so in a visually dominant society, everyone has this viewpoint, which is a me. And so now what happened in our society is that we believe this viewpoint really exists. So me is like a separate thing that is outside of what I view, which really is saying that I'm outside of the universe looking at it, which is an illusion. We're not outside of the universe, we are the universe. But the viewpoint that has been created in our culture since the Enlightenment creates this viewpoint that is outside of the universe so it can make stuff. And we have come to believe that this is what it means to be an individual now. It means to be an individual, you have to be a me. And now we're in the position where, in order to be an individual, I have to have rights. So now we have the explosion. Right, so if I'm an individual, I have to have rights. So now we have the explosion of rights, and that gets into the breakdown of all the sex. Down now you got to the rights of the gays, the rights of the bis, the rights of the trans, and all that. And this keeps breaking up.
They all want to be the same, but they want to be separate.
But then you get the you have rights of the blacks, of course, and then you have the rise of the rights of the whites for being discriminated against by civil rights. You see, now I have the right to. Everybody's getting a right. So now you've got corporations have rights.
Yes.
So now the victims have rights. remember this coming up in the 70s?
Oh, yes,
It blew people apart because
Yeah.
suddenly the criminals had rights.
yes,
So we called up Dirty Harry,
right.
you know, punk, you got no rights, boom.
Right, that's right.
So that was, the 70s was the outgrowth of the 60s, which was the birth of the unique one. You see, so the 60s was the birth of this subjective view of me that is separate from this conformity of the world, which was marching in lockstep. Like Hitler,
It was called test pad.
test pad. Yeah, so so we're really at a great time because we've been around long enough so that we can see the evolution of our society. So it's a very dynamic society because we have created these impossible imperatives. You see, we've created our society is unique because it is not static. So it's dynamic because it has these irreconcilable differences that drive us evolutionary-wise to create resolutions or new wholes that resolve the pain of the split. So we're like a schizophrenic society, constantly healing itself by discovering new holes. And that's what the presidential election is all about, because each president, by the function or of his vocation, offers a whole that resolves the tension of the conflicting parts. So the president is supposed to have a vision that will unite the fragmentation of our society of special interests. And that's kind of like what got Obama elected, was that he had a vision or a world idea
Open change.
of unity, yes, but of making change work for you
Yeah.
and offering a vision of racial harmony, which didn't happen, but who knows what history will say. But we can see this same dynamic working in marriages as in society, which we're either going to go to self-destructive violence or a creative new nation, a new birth. The Civil War went this way instead of that way.
Yeah.
So Lincoln is really the founding father of the nation because he created in his vision a new nation which solved not completely, but solved the slavery issue that was not solved by the original Constitution. The original Constitution left us like this, and so Lincoln created this, you see, which has evolved into this again,
Absolutely.
but in a different way. You see, so then this has to go into that, which will go into this again. So marriage is like that. At least I've found it to be that way. So it's so I think I looking back to where we got started, with my own marriage. For some reason, even though I got divorced, for some reason it was not a violent divorce. I still was in the area, and I lost my apartment. I was living in the basement. I was still, we were still friends and still working together to take care of the kids. But it offered me a space to work on some of the splits in my nature. And when I discovered a healing when the healing happened, I was able to go back and we'd get remarried, and we began to move the process forward. So I think that if love, we say love, I think love is the so I would say that love is the dynamic unity that moves our life forward towards greater and greater oneness. But the same dynamic could go towards violence. So violence would be failed love. But the dynamic is the same, which is these two imperatives of I'm the unique one and I have to be part of a greater whole. How can I be a part of a whole and be unique at the same time is only solved by love. But it's never static, it's dynamic. That means it's always changing. Well, we finally got around to getting Annie and marriage and the whole puzzle together.
Very good.
So I'll let you know next week how the wedding goes.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be good. Can I ask you a question about have you ever heard of the Gospel of Thomas?
Yes.
Is that the newly discovered gospel when they discovered the...
Well, newly in this century, last century.
You're right. How do I get a copy of that?
Google it up. It's all
okay.
yeah, Amazon would have it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the Gospel according to Thomas is the missing link to the accepted gospel.
Okay.
And the gospel is Gnostic. The Gospel according to Thomas is the knowledge of God gospel, which would be unity with God, whereas the gospel that the church accepted is relationship with God.
Right.
The problem, the two, is that God, man, in the accepted gospel and doctrine of the church, God and man are ontologically different. Their natures are different. Man, no matter what he does, cannot be God. And God can't. So Jesus then
The link between.
links them up.
Yeah.
You see,
I see.
the gospel, according to Thomas, would be in the line with Buddhism, where the only hope here is being in alignment, a relationship with God, which is an ethical relationship. You got. What do I have to do to be in a relationship with God? Well, you got to do the 10 Commandments, and you got to be good, and you got to do these behaviors. So if you do these behaviors, moral behaviors, then you're in relation. Join a church, and we're all in this thing together, and we're all this one together. So it's kind of like you can only be in relationship with God through a group. You got to be in a church that is in relationship with God. If you leave the church, well, then you're out in the cold.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So now you've got the inside and the out product, right? Now I'm on the inside, and all the other religions are out there, and they're against me. See, so the gospel according to Thomas changes, is a different paradigm, but it's knowledge of God. So the goal of the Gnostic is union, is a mystical, is union with God. And so then God is not out there in the sky as a creator. God is now, and God dwells within me as me. So in order to get to this, then I have to become more me. You see, I have to be more. By becoming uniquely me, I also become the one, or the whole. So that solves the ambiguity and the conflict of imperatives of how can I be me and be part of God at the same time, you see. So this is the mystic path of meditation and Buddhism and yoga and Gnostic Christianity, but then that got kicked out. Because you can't have, in other words, the church was going to ensure that there was a church.
Okay.
You see what I mean? So the church is based on having members.
That's why they hid his gospel? They hid it so nobody could find it?
Yeah, well, I don't know who hid it, but Gnosticism at the beginning of Christianity was a vital part of Christianity, but it was through the Nicene Creed and the various meetings, councils of the early church. Gnosticism is a threat to the paradigm that God and man are separate.
Okay.
Because if God and man are one, you don't need a church.
Okay.
See? You don't need a mediator.
Yeah.
See, the church is the mediator between the individual and God, just like Jesus is the mediator on a personal level. You see? So Gnosticism and the mystic path bypasses that.
Was he?
Eliminate the middleman.
Yes.
Yeah, was Thomas live at the time of Jesus, or was he later when the church
I'm
was?
not sure on the
Okay.
historical
Okay.
part of that.
Okay, I'll find
But
it.
it takes the teachings of Jesus and puts them in a mystical or Gnostic context, which changes the meaning of it altogether. There's a little bit of it in the New Testament, but people don't understand how to handle it.
Mhm.
The Sermon on the Mount is more or less this, but how are you going to live like the birds in the field and let God take care of tomorrow? You know, you got to get out there and do stuff.
Yeah, yeah, it gotta work.
Yeah. In other words, you can't. In other words, there's a lot of the teachings of Jesus are conflicted within the gospel, but they're just bypassed over, or love your enemy as yourself. You can't do that. You may pretend to do it, but your heart doesn't feel it. You can't make your heart change. You can't make yourself feel love for somebody. You can think of, you can do a behavior that looks like it. But that puts you back up here when you're thinking one thing, but you're doing another. You see. So, so I hope you find.
Yeah, I'm interested in reading that, because a lot of books refer
A lot
to
of the
that.
mystical tradition has been in Catholicism, but it's not much in the Meister Eckhart, St. John of the Cross. A lot of the Spanish mystics and German mystics were Gnostics. And so Meister Eckhart and Thomas Merton included into this mystical strain of Catholicism.
Yeah. He was not Gnostic, he was,
Well, yes, in the sense that he wanted knowledge of God, union with God, rather than separation but relationship to the church. So, but he was in the tradition of the Catholic monastic tradition.
right.
See, since the Enlightenment, that was a very powerful tradition in the Middle Ages, where you had more monks than you had lay people. But this mystic knowledge of God has usually been a monastic tradition in Buddhism, where you went to live in a monastery and you rejected or left the world because you didn't want anything to distract you from your devotion to merging with God. So the world is a conflict to that, you see. So today, Buddhism, lay Buddhism, and yoga are mystical traditions that work for people in the world. So this practice is all about how can you be a monk, a mystic in the world, doing a house, raising kids, having a job, and all these things. How do you make that a spiritual practice? See? secular society says, well, you can't. So you do a spiritual practice an hour on Sunday, and the rest of it you're in the world.
Right.
You know, that, and gradually the religious part gets compressed down to, well, no, you want to go to church. You know, that, it just becomes, it just
Yeah.
doesn't work.
Yeah,
Or you make it work by becoming the Amish or the Mennonites or something.
yeah.
Then you live a lifestyle. But yeah, so this, anyway, this,
Thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
thank you.
Ed, your story about the traffic ticket
Yeah,
reminded me of the story about the guy heading down 95 South now, going toward North Carolina, and he gets pulled. And the state policeman comes up and says, "You were going 85, do you have any idea that you're going 85 miles an hour?" And the guy said, "Well, yes, I did." And he said, "Well, why?" He said, "Well, a couple of years ago, my wife ran off with the state policeman, and when you came up behind me, I was afraid it was him, and he was bringing her back."